A blind man enters a bar and finds his way to a bar stool. After ordering a drink and sitting there for a while, the blind guy yells to the bartender, "Hey, you want to hear a blonde joke?" The bar immediately becomes absolutely quiet. In a husky, deep voice, the woman next to him says, "Before you tell that joke, you should know something. The bartender is blonde, the bouncer is blonde, and I'm a 6-foot-tall, 200-pound blonde with a black belt in karate. What's more, the fella sitting next to me is blonde and he's a weightlifter. The woman to your right is a blonde, and she's a pro wrestler. Think about it seriously, mister. You still want to tell that blonde joke?" The blind guy says, "Nah, not if I'm going to have to explain it 5 times. Patty had a job as a postman, and one Monday morning was riding through the neighborhood on his usual route, delivering the mail. As he approached one of the homes, he noticed that strangely both cars were still in the driveway. His wonder was cut short by Murphy, the homeowner, coming out with a load of empty beer, wine, and spirit bottles for the recycling bin. "Jesus, Murphy, looks like you lot had one hell of a party last night," the postman commented. Murphy, in obvious pain, replied, "Actually, we had it Saturday night. This is the first time I have felt like moving since 4 o'clock Sunday morning. We had about 15 couples from around the neighborhood over for some weekend fun, and it got a bit wild. We all got so drunk around midnight that we started playing Who Am I? The postman thought for a moment and said, "How the hell do you play Who Am I?" "Well, all the men go in the bedroom and come out one at a time covered with a sheet with only the family jewels showing through a hole in the sheet. Then the women try to guess who it is." The postman laughed and said, "Poo-poo? Sounds like fun. I'm sorry I missed it." "Probably a good thing you did pad," Murphy responded. "Your feckin' name came up 7 times. A Texan walks into a pub in Ireland. He says, "I hear you Irish are a bunch of hard drinkers. I'll give $500 American to anybody in here who can drink 10 pints of Guinness back to back." The room is quiet, and no one takes up the Texan's offer. One man even leaves. 30 minutes later, the same gentleman who left shows back up and taps the elderly Texan on the shoulder. "Is your bet still good?" asks the Irishman. The Texan says yes and asks the barkeep to line up 10 pints of Guinness. Immediately, the Irishman tears into all 10 of the pint glasses, drinking them all back to back. The other pub patrons cheer as the Texan sits in amazement. The Texan gives the Irishman the $500 and says, "If you don't mind me asking, where did you go for that 30 minutes you were gone?" The Irishman replies, "Oh, I had to go to the pub down the street to see if I could do it first." Sean and Patrick were best friends from childhood. During one particular night of revelry, the two agreed that when one passed on, the other would take and spill the contents of a bottle of fine Irish whiskey over the grave of the fondly missed and recently dead friend. And as fate would have it, Sean would be the first to pass. Pat, hearing of his friend's illness, came to visit his dear friend one last time. "Sean," said Pat, "can you hear me?" Faintly, Sean replied, "Aye, Patty, I can." Bashfully, Pat started, "Do you remember our pact, Sean?" "Yes, I do, Patty," Sean strained. "And you'll also remember that I was to pour the contents of a fine old bottle of whiskey over your grave, which we have been saving for going on 30 years now," said Pat. "Aye, Patty, that I do," whispered Sean. "It's a very old bottle now, you know," urged Pat. "And what are you getting at, Pat?" asked Sean briskly. "Well, Sean, when I pour the whiskey over your grave, would you be minding if I were to filter it through me kidneys first?"